But as the only Trump voter here, I don't agree with anything any of you are saying. And the important thing is a new Q poll that came out on April 15th this week that shows the president still has the support of 88% of the Republican Party. Same poll at the end of the Biden term had him at 71%. Trump is immensely popular with the Republican base, despite all of the things you might say. None of you are Trump voters, and that's fine. Yeah. But don't speak for Trump voters. We don't agree with what you're saying.
There's growing hand-wringing inside MAGA circles as Donald Trump's approval numbers continue to slip. And the tension is starting to show in public. Even some of the most hardline supporters are now expressing what looks like buyer's remorse, raising questions about what they once defended so strongly. That shift is fueling heated reactions across political media, including a recent panel on Abby Phillips' show featuring sharp exchanges between MAGA-aligned voices and outspoken never-Trump critics like SE Cupp. It's a moment that highlights the widening divide inside the conservative space, and we're going to break down exactly what was said and why it's getting so much attention. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Let's get into it together.
It's no secret many in MAGA aren't too thrilled with Donald Trump for some portions of the things he's been doing now, from the Epstein files to the economy and now the war. They say he promised to never start. Many of the loudest people who helped get him elected are starting to say they have buyer's remorse. Our friend SE had this to say to many of them after the president's threat to wipe out a civilization.
You and your buyer's remorse. Who would listen to you now? Who would listen to you? You got us here. You voted for him. You told everyone they have to vote for him, right? It's going to be World War III if you don't vote for him. Give me a break. No one cares what you have to say anymore. We told you so.
But some, particularly on the Democratic side of the aisle, are opening their arms.
The thing that has been very fascinating, especially about Marjorie and Candace, is that they are not just coming out like the other ones that you'd mentioned, where they're saying this action is wrong, right? They're saying, I am done with you.
Yeah, it's like a values based. Like this guy is bad, not like this policy is bad.
Right, and I think that we should give them credit for that.
The message cannot be, I told you so. The message has to be, welcome aboard. What else can we do together?
SE, you are by no means a MAGA defector. You were never in
early and often to never Trump.
Early and often. You screamed no. No to what?
I have been out in these streets too long, Sarah.
In these streets?
I have been out in these streets since 2015, opposing this un-American, anti-democratic, fascistic garbage. And while at the same time, these people that they're mentioning, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, that name them, the long list, have been defending it for fun, for money, for clicks, for fame. Not all converts are created equal, and we should not. It's not just for Democrats to decide, it's for never-Trumpers who are conservative as well to decide. We should not be aligning with people who are losers, liars, and grifters, who have only come to see the light because either it's politically expedient or it's profitable or whatever. Now, I say to voters who have lost their appetite for Trump, absolutely. Congratulations. I'm sorry he disappointed you. I know exactly how he did by promising you things he's completely ignored. I get you. Come on over. The water's warm. But for the professional liars, losers, and grifters, no, we don't want you. And just because you've come to where we have been for 10 years doesn't mean you get to use us to launder your reputations. Not happening on my watch. And I don't like this conversation where it's like, well, shouldn't we give them credit? No credit. It's at the 11th hour. It's the 11th hour of this. He is a lame duck. He is gone in 2 years.
Guys.
What took you so long? I'm sorry. Somebody stop me or I will just...
There's a strong agreement here with SE Cupp's core warning about where things could go wrong strategically. The idea is that Democrats shouldn't be rushing to rescue figures from the collapsing MAGA ecosystem, whether that's media personalities or political commentators who are now shifting positions as the movement loses momentum. From this perspective, many of these voices aren't necessarily driven by a sudden change in beliefs, but by timing and political survival, positioning themselves for whatever comes after Trump. The argument goes further to suggest that trying to bring these kinds of figures into the Democratic fold could backfire. Instead of strengthening the party's direction, it could dilute it. The concern is that these are not people who would naturally align with core Democratic priorities, but rather individuals who would attempt to reshape the party from the inside toward more conservative positions. And at the center of it is a familiar critique of Democratic strategy, The belief that there's always a mystery Republican voter waiting to be converted, when in reality, attention might be better spent on the party's existing base and its established policy direction.
Yeah, exactly.
This is personal. I've gotten death threats. I have lived this life at the expense of profession, at the expense of friendships, at the expense of money. I've done it. It's been hard, but it's my conscience telling me to do it. You don't get to flip a switch and say, I don't like him anymore. Can I be with you guys? No.
Do you see who she's talking about, who are constantly out there and were very supportive, and now they turn on some things, not all things, but they turn on some things very differently than you see, for example, a Liz Cheney or someone in that camp who...
Fundamentally different.
Yeah.
Fundamentally
Should the Democrats open their arms to, I mean, Liz Cheney is very conservative.
No.
There's a clear rejection here of the idea that Democrats should be building bridges with high-profile Republican defectors, with Liz Cheney used as the main example of why that strategy is seen as a mistake. The argument is that despite her break with Trump, she remains fundamentally conservative and has a long history of opposing Democratic positions, meaning her alignment is viewed as more situational than ideological. From that perspective, moments like Kamala Harris appearing alongside her are framed as politically misguided, based on an unrealistic expectation that it might unlock a wave of moderate suburban Republican voters. Instead, the core message is that Democrats risk weakening their own direction if they prioritize symbolic alliances over substance, and that their focus should remain on strengthening support through progressive policies rather than shifting toward the political center to court unlikely converts.
Into this, anybody, after January 6th, anybody could have known this if they chose to pay attention to what he'd said and what he'd done during the first term, particularly if they were self-described conservatives.
Joe,
But hold on,
he's not done.
but a successful pro-democracy movement. Look at what just happened in Hungary. Look at the study of successful pro-democracy movements. They've got to be positive, patriotic, and inclusive. Positive, patriotic, and inclusive. So it's good to castigate the corruption and the rising costs and the cronyism and the chaos and cruelty, all of that. But you got to welcome people in and set a big tent message. And so there shouldn't be purity tests in a pro-democracy movement.
For voters. Marjorie Taylor Greene, like 5 minutes ago, was still saying that the insurrectionists were patriots.
Right.
Are patriots. These are people who would still vote for Trump if they were in his favor. I'm sorry. We need to be skeptical of the folks who are claiming us in their name. I'm not talking about voters. You're right.
I come at this from a foreign policy perspective. You know, I've, again, 10 years of following Trump. Everyone thinks they know what his foreign policy doctrine is, right? Oh, he campaigned against intervention. He campaigned he's going to be tough on China. Now he campaigned he's going to make a deal with China. No more wars, no more globalism. And sooner or later, everyone figures out that Donald Trump has no core foreign policy principles whatsoever. And they change all the time based on whoever he talked to last. Maybe he has a financial interest. Maybe his kids have a financial interest. Maybe he just gets talked into it by another foreign leader. And so, of course, if you stake your sort of foreign policy identity on no more wars, and we're not going to do Middle East interventions, we're not going to send young American men and women to fight and die in a far-off place for unclear reasons, unclear justifications. Well, the Iran war is the opposite of all of that. So he's forced all of these people who claimed that they were for Trump's foreign policy to either pick between their own integrity or following him to the exact opposite foreign policy. And some of them are going to follow him, and some of them are going to maintain whatever semblance of foreign policy integrity they have left. And they're both bad choices because they're both based on this premise that Donald Trump actually has a view of the world and America's role in it that isn't liable to change tomorrow. And guess what? It's going to change tomorrow again.
Joe, what do you make of what you're hearing from the Megyn Kellys and the Tucker Carlsons and Benny Johnson?
I think SE's right. I think these are people who are grifters. They're going for clicks, payments, or their own aggrandizement, and they flip because it's politically expedient for them or profitable for them, and that's fine. But as the only Trump voter here, I don't agree with anything any of you are saying. And the important thing is a new Q poll that came out on April 15th this week that shows the president still has the support of 88% of the Republican Party. Same poll at the end of the Biden term had him at 71%. Trump is immensely popular with the Republican base, despite all of the things you might say. None of you are Trump voters, and that's fine. But don't speak for Trump voters. We don't agree with what you're saying.
What's really emerging here is a deeper worry about where this political shift could actually lead next. There's a concern that Democrats might misread what's happening on panels like this and start overcorrecting, trying to broaden their appeal by welcoming figures who are only now distancing themselves from Trump. In this view, people like Joe Borelli are seen as fully committed, while others like SE Cupp are framed as part of a broader big tent conversation that some argue could dilute the party's direction. To make the point more personal, the speaker describes someone they know, a long-time, almost unquestioning Trump supporter, who is only now beginning to push back after policies started affecting him directly. But even with that shift, the argument is that his political loyalty doesn't necessarily change direction. Instead, he's portrayed as someone who may step away from Trump personally, but would still default to future Republican figures rather than crossing over to Democrats. From there, the broader claim becomes clear that a significant portion of voters may be moving away from Trump specifically, but not necessarily toward the Democratic Party. And that creates a strategic dilemma, whether Democrats should try to reach out to these disaffected voices, or stay focused on strengthening their existing base instead of reshaping their message around potential political converts. The takeaway is a warning against what's seen as a recurring political mistake, investing too much energy in figures who may be shifting for convenience rather than conviction, while overlooking the voters who are already aligned with the party's long-term goals.